Good day, everyone. My name is Mathalichi Abragan, and I welcome you all to my presentation. As you can see on the screen, this report is focused on the Republic Act 11313, also known as the Safe Spaces Act or Bawal Bastos Law. I hope that in this discussion I could help you widen your understanding about this law, and if this law is new to you, I hope I can deliver a presentation good enough for you guys to learn more about this act and can have some takeaways that you can apply in real situations. Well, then, let's begin. So, to start off, this law is relatively new and was just signed around 3 years ago. The Republic Act 11313 was signed into law by President Rodrigo Duterte in April 2019 with the aim of ensuring the equality, security, and safety of every individual. The law covers all forms of gender based sexual harassment committed in private or public spaces, educational or training institutions, workplace, as well as online space. For a clearer understanding, here are the kinds of harassment a person could do to a victim. 1. Any act involving any unwelcome sexual advances, requests, or demands of sexual favors or any act of a sexual nature, whether done verbally, physically, or through the use of technology. 2. Any conduct of a sexual nature or other conduct based on sex affecting the dignity of a person which is unwelcome, unreasonable, and offensive to the recipient. And 3. Any conduct that is unwelcome and pervasive and creates an intimidating, hostile, or humiliating environment for the recipient. Specifically, catcalling, wolf whistling, relentless requests for personal details, cursing, and other harassment that is currently seen in this slide. The mentioned acts are punishable by law, and the person that will commit those acts will be facing its penalties correspondingly. So, the first act is gender based sexual harassment in streets and public spaces. The harassment under this act are cursing, catcalling, and other verbal pestering that offends an individual. In the screen are its penalties from the first offense with 1,000 pesos and community service of 12 hours of attendance to a gender sensitivity seminar to the third offense, which is arresto menor of 11 to 30 days or a fine of 10,000 pesos. The next punishable act is still the same but with a different kind of harassment, which is showing of offensive body gestures, such as exposing private parts to the public, threatening or intimidating the offended party, public masturbation, and other similar lewd sexual actions. The first offense is fining of 10,000 pesos and 12 hours of attendance to a gender sensitivity seminar, up to its third offense, arresto mayor of 1 month and 1 day to 6 months in jail, and a fine of 20,000 pesos. Moving on to the next punishable act under gender based sexual harassment is physical harassment. This includes stalking and any acts aforementioned when accompanied by touching. Such an act is being punished with arresto menor of 11 to 30 days or a fine of 30,000 pesos, provided that it includes attendance in a gender sensitivity seminar during first offense. Next, the second offense is punished through arresto mayor of 1 month and 1 day or a fine of 50,000 pesos. Then the third offense includes arresto mayor in its maximum period or a fine of 100,000 pesos. Sexual harassments are not only done in public but to online platforms as well. So, gender based online sexual harassment is also punishable under this law, in which prison correctional in its medium period or a fine of not less than 100,000 but no more than 500,000 pesos or both at the discretion of the court. The fifth one is qualified gender based sexual harassment, and the penalties for violating this law is next higher in degree. Next would be gender based sexual harassment that usually occurs on workplace and institutions. Doing such an act is being punished through administrative penalties provided by the Employers Committee on Decorum and Investigation and without prejudice to other applicable criminal violations and penalties. Then followed by failure of employers or school heads to implement their duties under the Safe Spaces Act. Violating this have a consequence that includes fine of not less than 5,000 or no more than 10,000 pesos. Lastly, the failure of employers or school heads to take actions on reported acts of gender-based sexual harassment committed in the workplace or in the educational institution. Doing so will be punished through a fine of not less than 10,000 nor more than 15,000 pesos. Now, who are the persons protected by the law or benefits it? Well, according to Rule 1 of RA 11313, General Provisions, Section 3, the state's policy is to value the dignity of every human being and to ensure that human rights are fully respected. It is also the state's policy to honor women's contributions to nation building and to ensure their fundamental equality before the law. The state also understands that men and women need equality, security, and safety not only in their homes but also in public spaces, may it be online, at work, and in educational training institutions. This means that all individuals, no matter what gender, is covered in this law. Next are the rights and obligations of employers and LGUs under this law. It is written on Section 8 the duties of the LGUs, and they shall have to pass the ordinance which shall localize the applicability of this act. Second, they must disseminate or post in conspicuous places a copy of this act. Third is them to provide measures to prevent gender-based sexual harassment in educational institutions. Fourth is to discourage and impose fines on acts of GBSH. Fifth is to create an anti-sexual harassment hotline. And lastly is to coordinate with the Department of the Interior and Local Government or the DILG on the implementation of this act. Section 17 talks about the duties of employers, and an employer shall need to comply with everything stated in this section to avoid penalties. So the duties and obligation of employers include disseminate or post in a conspicuous place a copy of this act to all persons in the workplace, provide measures to prevent gender-based sexual harassment in the workplace, create an independent internal mechanism or a committee on decorum and investigation to investigate and address complaints of gender-based sexual harassment, which shall follow certain guidelines on making it, some of which are designating women as its head and not less than half of its members should be women. Investigation and decision about a certain complaint must be completed within 10 days or less and guarantee confidentiality to the greatest extent possible. Last one among the duties of employers is them to provide and disseminate in consultation with all persona in the workplace a code of conduct or workplace policy which shall prohibit GBSH, describe procedures of the internal mechanism, and set penalties. And that concludes my presentation. However, I'd like to quickly summarize the main points or takeaways in this report. So the RA 11313, or also known as the Safe Spaces Act, is like a safe haven for those who are sexually harassed, and almost everyone who experiences sexual harassment will be covered by the law, may it be men or women, but most of the cases are women. And violating the law will of course be resulted in penalties, where the heaviness of the punishment varies from the actions committed. And that brings us to the end. Thank you for your time, and God bless us all.